When hope becomes a weapon, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Zephyrian Council stretched across 3 kilometers of crystalline architecture, its walls humming with the collective consciousness of 12 different species. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the center of the massive chamber, her black military uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes and biomechanical exoskeletons of the alien representatives surrounding her. The weight of 400 eyes from species across the galaxy pressed down on her shoulders, but Sarah kept her expression neutral. She had trained for this moment her entire career. High Chancellor Vex Thari of the Altarian Collective rose from his floating meditation pod, his 4 arms spreading in what Sarah had learned was a gesture of solemn authority. His species had evolved on a gas giant, developing translucent skin that revealed the intricate network of light-based neural pathways beneath. When he spoke, his voice resonated through bioacoustic amplifiers that translated his electromagnetic communication into audible speech. "Commander Chen," he began, his words carrying the weight of desperate hope. "We gather today not in celebration, but in acknowledgement of our collective failure. For 3 standard cycles, our greatest minds have attempted to solve the crisis of Nexus 7. 17 expeditions have been lost. Our most advanced battle fleets have been consumed. The survival of 4 dying worlds now hangs in the balance." Sarah nodded respectfully, though internally she noted the careful phrasing. The Council wasn't presenting this as an opportunity but as a final, desperate gamble. They expected her and her team to fail, just like all the others. The only difference was that humans were considered expendable enough to risk on an impossible mission. The holographic display that materialized above the assembly showed Nexus 7 in all its terrifying beauty. The planet appeared as a swirling mass of deep purples and electric blues, with continents that seemed to shift and breathe. Massive spires of what looked like living crystal jutted from the surface, pulsing with bioluminescent energy. It was beautiful, alien, and absolutely lethal according to every report Sarah had read. Ambassador Krelon of the Synthetic Minds Union stepped forward, her android body clicking with precise mechanical movements. Unlike the other species, the synthetics had abandoned biological forms centuries ago, uploading their consciousness into quantum processing matrices. Her voice carried no emotion, only cold calculation. "The statistical probability of human success approaches 0.03%, she announced. "However, your species demonstrates certain chaotic behavioral patterns that our predictive models cannot fully quantify. This uncertainty represents our final variable in solving the Nexus 7 equation." Sarah almost smiled at that. The aliens saw human unpredictability as a flaw, but she knew it was actually humanity's greatest strength. While other species had evolved toward perfect logic or collective harmony, humans had retained their capacity for creative chaos, for making decisions that didn't make sense but somehow worked anyway. Dr. Zalmoth from the empathic hierarchy projected his thoughts directly into the minds of everyone present, his jellyfish-like form pulsing with emotional resonance. The sensation of his alien emotions was uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. Sarah felt his genuine sadness, his fear for the dying worlds, and underneath it all, his complete lack of faith in the human mission. "The Devourers of Nexus 7 represent a threat unlike anything we have encountered," his mental voice whispered through their consciousness. "They consume not just matter and energy, but the very essence of life itself. Entire ecosystems vanish within days of their arrival. They show no interest in communication, no response to diplomatic overtures. They simply devour and expand." The display shifted to show recordings from previous missions. Sarah watched alien ships approaching the planet, only to be swarmed by dark, writhing masses that seemed to pour from the planet's surface like living oil. The ships didn't explode or crash, they simply dissolved, absorbed into the black tide that consumed everything in its path. "Your mission parameters are simple," High Chancellor Vexithari continued. "Establish a foothold on Nexus 7, determine the nature of the Devourer threat, and if possible, eliminate it to allow resource extraction. The 4 worlds of the Kethmori system have less than 2 cycles before their stars collapse. The rare elements found on Nexus 7 represent their only hope for stellar stabilization technology. Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. What resources will be made available to my team? The pause that followed told her everything she needed to know. Ambassador Krelon's mechanical features shifted into what might have been regret on a biological face. Your species' ship, the UES Defiance, has been upgraded with basic Zephyrian shield technology and emergency medical systems. Beyond that, we cannot risk advanced equipment that might be corrupted or consumed by the Devourers. Translation: they were being sent to die with minimal support. Sarah had expected as much. The Council saw humans as useful cannon fodder, too primitive to matter but just unpredictable enough to potentially succeed where logic had failed. I'll need to brief my team and review all available data, Sarah said. When do we depart? The window for optimal travel to Nexus 7 opens in 6 standard days, Vexithari replied. Commander Chen, I want you to understand we do not send you to your death lightly. If there were any other option. There isn't, Sarah finished for him. And honestly, Chancellor, I don't think you fully understand what you're asking us to do. But that's okay. We'll figure it out. The dismissal from the council chambers was polite but swift. Sarah found herself walking through the gleaming corridors of the Zephyrian station, her boots echoing against floors that seemed to be made of compressed starlight. The artificial gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, making each step feel like a small bounce. Her team was waiting in their assigned quarters, a modest suite that the aliens had attempted to make comfortable for human physiology. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from a holographic display showing Devourer biology scans, his weathered face creased with concentration. At 62, he was the oldest member of the team and had spent 4 decades studying xenobiology. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and his green eyes held the keen intelligence that had made him famous for his groundbreaking work on interspecies communication. How bad is it? Lieutenant Elena Vasquez asked from her position by the window. She was studying the tactical readouts on her portable display, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. At 34, she had survived 3 different alien conflicts and earned a reputation as someone who could find a way to win, even when victory seemed impossible. Her Hispanic heritage showed in her features, but her voice carried the flat professionalism of a career military officer. Engineer Tommy Park barely looked up from the circuit board he was modifying, his fingers dancing over components that shouldn't have been able to interface with each other. At 28, he was the youngest team member and possibly the most brilliant. His Korean-American parents had immigrated to the Mars colonies when he was 12, and he'd grown up learning to make impossible technology work with spare parts and pure determination. Dr. Amira Hassan sat cross-legged on the floor, her meditation pose not hiding the fact that she was simultaneously running psychological profiles on 3 different alien species. Her Egyptian ancestry showed in her sharp features and dark skin, and her calm demeanor masked one of the most analytically brilliant minds in human space. At 36, she specialized in xenopsychology, and had an uncanny ability to understand the motivations of alien minds. They expect us to die, Sarah said simply, settling into the chair at the head of their small conference table. The mission is real, the threat is real, and people will die if we fail. But they're sending us because we're expendable, not because they think we can succeed. Marcus looked up from his scans. The Devourer biology is unlike anything I've seen. They appear to be a collective organism, possibly silicon-based but with organic neural networks. The energy signatures suggest they can manipulate matter at the molecular level, which explains how they dissolve ships, Elena said grimly. Standard weapons won't work if they can just absorb the energy and convert it to biomass. Tommy finally set down his tools and joined the conversation. I've been looking at the sensor data from failed missions. The Devourers don't just consume randomly. There's a pattern, a rhythm to their expansion. They're not mindless. They're following some kind of protocol. That's what worries me, Amira added, her voice thoughtful. Every report describes them as pure consumers, but consumption without purpose doesn't make evolutionary sense. There has to be a reason they're doing this. Sarah nodded, appreciating her team's insights. This was why she had specifically requested each of them for this mission. The Council saw humans as chaotic and unpredictable, but Sarah knew that within that chaos lay creativity, adaptability, and the ability to see solutions that pure logic missed. "We have 6 days to prepare," she announced. "Tommy, I want you to modify our ship's systems with every trick you know. If we're going in with minimal support, we need every advantage we can create ourselves. Elena, assume standard weapons won't work and plan accordingly. Marcus, I want everything you can learn about the Devourers, including theories they haven't tested yet. Amira, I need psychological profiles on the Council species. I have a feeling we're not getting the whole truth about this mission." Over the next 6 days, the team worked with the focused intensity that had made humanity's reputation in the galaxy. Tommy rewired the Defiance's systems, integrating human technology that the aliens didn't understand with their provided upgrades. He created backup systems for their backup systems and hidden protocols that would activate only under specific conditions. Elena trained in the station's combat simulators, adapting human military tactics for use against an enemy that couldn't be traditionally killed. She developed strategies based on misdirection, environmental manipulation, and psychological warfare adapted for non-human minds. Marcus dove deep into every scrap of data about the Devourers, cross-referencing their behavior with similar species from human databases. He began to develop theories about their true nature that painted a very different picture from the official Council reports. Amira spent her time analyzing the subtle tells in alien behavior, the micro-expressions and pheromone releases that revealed hidden thoughts. By the 4th day, she had concluded that the Council was definitely hiding something significant about Nexus 7. Sarah coordinated it all while conducting her own research into the political implications of their mission. She studied the histories of the dying worlds, the resource distribution networks of the Council, and the power dynamics between species. By the time departure day arrived, she had formed her own theories about what they would really find on Nexus 7. The UES Defiance sat in the station's launch bay, a sleek predator among the organic curves of alien vessels. It was purely human, in design brutal efficiency wrapped in adaptive armor plating. The Council had added their shield generators and medical systems, but the ship's heart remained defiantly human. As the team performed their final equipment checks, Sarah gathered them for one last briefing. They stood in the cargo bay, surrounded by supplies and equipment that might keep them alive on a world that had killed everyone else who had tried. "I don't think the Devourers are what the Council believes them to be," she announced, "and I don't think this mission is what they've told us it is. We're going to find the truth, and we're going to survive whatever we discover. But more than that, we're going to succeed in ways they never imagined possible." Elena checked her sidearm one final time. "Any specific orders for when things go sideways?" Sarah smiled, the expression carrying more confidence than she felt. "Improvise, adapt, show them what humans do when logic isn't enough." The launch countdown began, transmitted through the ship's speakers in the clicking musical language of the Altarians. Sarah strapped herself into the command chair, watching as the bay doors opened to reveal the star-filled void beyond. Nexus 7 waited somewhere in that darkness, along with answers that might save or doom 4 dying worlds. "Defiance Control to Launch Bay 7, came the transmission from the station. "You are cleared for departure. May the collective wisdom of the Council guide your path." Sarah activated the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Chen. We're not counting on wisdom to get us through this. We're counting on being too stubborn to quit and too crazy to know when we're beaten." The Defiance pulled away from the station, its engines burning bright against the cosmic backdrop. Behind them, the representatives of 12 species watched, their departure with expressions of resignation and faint hope. They expected to never see the humans again. They had no idea what they had just unleashed on the galaxy. Dancing with monsters, the journey to Nexus 7 took 18 days through hyperspace, during which the crew of the Defiance refined their theories and prepared for what they expected to be their final mission. Sarah spent hours reviewing the tactical data, but something about the Devourer attack patterns bothered her. There was too much precision in their seemingly chaotic consumption, too much purpose in their apparent mindlessness. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system, The sight that greeted them defied every expectation they had formed. Nexus 7 hung before them like a living jewel, its surface covered in vast networks of bioluminescent forests that pulsed with rhythmic light. Crystalline spires rose from the continents, reaching toward space like fingers grasping for the stars. It was beautiful in a way that made Sarah's chest tight with unexpected emotion. "Sensor readings are off the charts," Tommy reported from his engineering station. "The entire planet is generating massive amounts of bioelectrical energy. Those crystal formations aren't just geological, they're some kind of organic technology." Marcus leaned over his xenobiology console, his face illuminated by streams of data. "The life signs are incredible. This isn't a dead world consumed by parasites. It's one of the most vibrant ecosystems I've ever encountered. The biodiversity readings are higher than Earth's rainforests." Elena frowned at her tactical display. "Then where are the devourers? According to council reports, they should have swarmed us the moment we entered the system." As if summoned by her words, the ship's proximity alarms began to chime. Sarah looked up to see a sight that would have terrified the crew of any other vessel. Rising from the planet's surface came a tide of darkness, flowing upward through the atmosphere like living shadow. The mass resolved into individual forms as it approached massive insect-like creatures with wings that seemed to be made of crystallized space itself. "Devourers," Amira whispered, but her voice carried fascination rather than fear. "Look at their formation patterns. They're not attacking, they're investigating." The creatures surrounded the Defiance in a complex three-dimensional pattern, their movements coordinated with mathematical precision. Up close, Sarah could see they weren't the mindless monsters described in council reports. Each creature was easily 50 meters long, with bodies that seemed to shift between organic and mechanical states. Their wings caught and reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "They're trying to communicate," Marcus announced, suddenly. "The light patterns from their wings," it structured. "Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, basic geometric proofs. They're showing us they're intelligent." Sarah made a decision that would have horrified the council representatives. "Open a channel, all frequencies." "Sarah, what are you doing?" Helena asked, her hand instinctively moving toward her weapon controls. "Something the council never tried," Sarah replied. "Tommy, can you match their light pattern sequences?" Tommy's fingers flew over his console. "I can use our navigation lights to mirror their signals. It'll be crude, but if they're really trying to communicate..." The moment the Defiance began flashing its lights in response to the Devourer patterns, the creature's behavior changed dramatically. They pulled back slightly, their formations shifting into what could only be described as excitement. The light patterns became more complex, more rapid. "They're teaching us," Amira breathed. "Those aren't random patterns they're showing us there, language structure. Basic concepts first, then building complexity." For 3 hours, the Defiance and the Devourers exchanged increasingly sophisticated light-based messages. Marcus worked with Tommy to decode the meaning behind the patterns, while Amira analyzed the psychological implications of their teaching methodology. Finally, a message came through that chilled Sarah to the bone. The creatures had learned enough human mathematical conventions to send a clear warning. "Danger. Guardians come. Must hide." "Guardians?" Elena asked. "What are they talking about?" The answer came in the form of massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized the configuration, massive geometric ships that registered as pure technology without any organic components. "Those aren't in any of the council files," Tommy said, his voice tight with concern. "But the energy signatures, they're ancient, older than any known civilization." The Devourers around the Defiance began transmitting urgent patterns. Marcus had learned enough of their language to translate. "Sentinels, death machines, come to cleanse, we fight, you help?" Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. "The Devourers aren't invaders," she announced to her crew. "They're refugees, and they've been fighting a war against those things for who knows how long." One of the largest Devourers approached the ship directly, its massive form dwarfing the human vessel. Through the viewport, Sarah could see intelligence in its multifaceted eyes and something that looked remarkably like desperation. "Dr. Hassan," Sarah called, "can you establish more direct communication? If we're going to help them, we need to understand what we're really dealing with." Amira had been working on psychological profiles of the Devourers based on their communication patterns. "I think I can create a basic empathic interface. Their thought patterns are collective but individualistic at the same time. It's like, imagine if every person in a city could share thoughts instantly, but still maintained their personal identity." She activated an experimental communication device Tommy had jury-rigged from their translation equipment. Suddenly, the bridge was filled with alien presence, not threatening but overwhelming in its complexity. Sarah felt the touch of thousands of minds, all focused on survival, all carrying the weight of unimaginable loss. Images flooded their consciousness. Worlds consumed not by the Devourers, but by the geometric ships. Entire star systems stripped of life by machines that followed protocols older than most galactic civilizations. The Devourers fleeing from system to system, trying to stay ahead of the relentless pursuit. "They call themselves the Kethvara," Amira translated, her voice strained from maintaining the connection. The word means life weavers in their language. They don't consume worlds, they integrate with them, creating symbiotic relationships that enhance both the planet and themselves. More images flowed through the connection. Nexus 7 before the Kethvara arrived, a dying world with failing ecosystems. The integration process that had transformed it into the vibrant, living planet they saw now. The desperate defense against the Sentinels, machines programmed eons ago to eliminate any species that didn't match their creator's definition of worthy life. "The Council," Sarah said, the full scope of the situation becoming clear. "They don't know. They see the Kethvara's integration with worlds and assume its consumption. They've been trying to eliminate the victims, not the real threat." Elena studied the approaching Sentinel fleet. "How many ships are we looking at?" Tommy's readings were grim. 47 vessels, each one the size of a small moon. Energy output suggests weaponry capable of sterilizing entire continents. Through the empathic link, the Kethvara shared their battle history. They had fought the Sentinels across dozens of star systems, always retreating, always losing ground. Their bioships were fast and adaptable, but they couldn't match the sheer, destructive power of the ancient machines. "What's their usual strategy?" Sarah asked. The answer came in the form of tactical memories, hit-and-run attacks, sacrificial rearguard actions, desperate evacuations. The Kethvara fought with the courage of the desperate, but they were slowly losing a war that had lasted for centuries. "That's not going to work this time," Elena observed. "If those Sentinels are here for Nexus 7, there's nowhere left to run. This is their last stand." Sarah made a decision that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. "Then we make sure it's a winning stand." "Tommy, what kind of weapons do those Sentinels have?" "Energy cannons, matter disintegrators, and something that looks like reality-warping technology," Tommy replied. "Standard defensive strategies won't work against weapons that can rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas." "Good thing we don't use standard strategies," Sarah said. "Elena, I need every unconventional tactic you can think of. Marcus, what are the Kethvara's capabilities when they're not running scared? Amira, can you maintain communication with them during combat? Tommy, start figuring out how to make our ship do things it was never designed to do." Over the next 6 hours, as the Sentinel fleet approached, an unprecedented alliance took shape. The Kethvara shared their biotechnological capabilities, showing how they could merge their ships with others to create hybrid vessels. Tommy worked frantically to create interface points that would allow human and Kethvara technology to merge, without destroying each other. Marcus discovered that the Kethvara's integration abilities weren't limited to planets. They could temporarily merge with other life forms, sharing capabilities and enhancing both organisms. It was a form of symbiosis that Council species had never encountered, because their rigid technological evolution had made them incompatible with such biological flexibility. Elena developed battle plans that relied on human unpredictability, combined with Kethvara adaptability. Traditional military doctrine assumed logical opponents following predictable patterns. The Sentinels were highly logical, following programming that was millions of years old. That inflexibility might be their weakness. Amira maintained the empathic link with the Kethvara collective, serving as a bridge between human intuition and alien collective consciousness. Through her, Sarah could coordinate strategy across dozens of bioships while maintaining the element of surprise that made human tactics so effective. As the Sentinel fleet entered attack range, Sarah opened communications with the lead Kethvara ship. "Are you ready to try something completely insane?" The response came back in emotional harmony rather than words: anticipation, hope, and the fierce joy of having allies who understood that sometimes the impossible was the only option worth attempting. "All ships," Sarah broadcast to the combined human Kethvara fleet, "remember that our enemies have spent millions of years perfecting the art of logical warfare. Today we're going to show them what happens when logic meets chaos." The Battle of Nexus 7 was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first Sentinel weapons fired, lances of energy that could vaporize mountains, striking toward the planet's surface. But instead of the scattered defensive fleet they expected, the ancient machines encountered something unprecedented. Bioships that flowed like liquid around their attacks, human vessels that moved in patterns, that defied tactical analysis, and hybrid craft that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the Sentinels' formation falter for the first time in millennia. "Let's teach some old machines new tricks about what it means to be alive." When chaos becomes strategy, the opening minutes of the Battle of Nexus 7 shattered every assumption about warfare that had guided galactic civilization for millennia. The Sentinel fleet, programmed with tactical algorithms older than most star systems, found themselves facing an enemy that operated outside every parameter in their vast databases. Sarah watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the first wave of Sentinel energy beams carved through space where her ship should have been. Instead, the human vessel danced between the attacks in a pattern that Tommy had described as controlled falling with style. The ship's trajectory made no logical sense. It curved when it should have been straight, accelerated when it should have decelerated, and somehow ended up exactly where it needed to be to avoid destruction. "Their targeting computers can't lock onto us," Elena reported with savage satisfaction. "Every time they calculate an intercept course, we're already somewhere else." The Kethvara bioships were performing even more impossible maneuvers. Their living hulls could reshape themselves in real time, presenting different mass distributions and energy signatures from moment to moment. When Sentinel weapons locked onto what appeared to be a ship's engine cluster, they would hit empty space as the bioship flowed into a completely new configuration. But it was the hybrid vessels that truly confounded the ancient machines. Tommy had managed to create temporary integration points between human technology and Kethvara biosystems, producing ships that existed in a constant state of controlled transformation. One moment a vessel would register as metal and electronics, the next as living tissue and bioelectrical networks. "Status report on the enemy fleet," Sarah called out as the Defiance completed another impossible evasive maneuver. Marcus, who had been monitoring Sentinel communications, looked up with excitement. "Their command algorithms are cycling through error correction routines. They're trying to update their tactical databases in real time, but they can't process the illogical nature of our attack patterns." Through the empathic link, Amira relayed the Kethvara's growing confidence. The bioships had been running from the Sentinels for centuries, but now they were fighting alongside allies who turned chaos into a weapon. For the first time in generations, the Lifeweavers felt hope. "Phase 2, Sarah announced. "Elena, initiate your special surprise." Elena grinned as she activated a series of modifications she had made to their weapon systems. Instead of firing directly at the Sentinel ships, the Defiance began launching what appeared to be random debris chunks of metal, frozen atmosphere from their life support recycling, and even Tommy's leftover circuit boards from his endless modifications. The Sentinel's defensive systems, designed to counter energy weapons and guided missiles, largely ignored the apparent junk. Their programming classified it as insignificant battlefield debris not worth the energy expenditure to destroy. That classification proved to be a fatal error. Hidden within the debris were Tommy's most creative inventions, microtransmitters that attached to Sentinel hulls and began broadcasting random electromagnetic noise, disrupting the ancient ship's internal communications. Nanoscale devices that used Kethvara biotechnology to literally grow into the Sentinel's systems, creating organic shorts in their quantum processing matrices. "It's working," Tommy reported with barely contained excitement. "Their coordination is breaking down. Individual ships are starting to fire on each other because they can't tell friendly signals from the interference we're generating." The tide of battle began to shift as the Sentinel fleet, previously moving in perfect mathematical harmony, started to fragment into individual units making increasingly irrational decisions. Their programming, optimized for fighting logical opponents, couldn't adapt to an enemy that used randomness as a fundamental strategy. But the Sentinels were far from defeated. As their coordination degraded, they switched to a more desperate protocol: total annihilation. If they couldn't defeat the illogical enemy through tactical superiority, they would simply destroy everything in the system. "Energy spike detected," Marcus announced, his voice tight with alarm. "They're charging some kind of planet-killer weapon." Through the viewports, Sarah could see the largest Sentinel vessel reconfiguring itself, its geometric hull unfolding like a deadly flower. Energy crackled between newly revealed components, building toward a discharge that would sterilize Nexus 7 and everything around it. "That's not just a weapon," Tommy realized, studying the energy patterns. "It's a reality anchor. They're going to lock down local spacetime to prevent any form of escape or evasion." The Kethvara Collective transmitted their understanding through Amira's link. This was the ultimate Sentinel protocol. When faced with truly adaptive opponents, they would sacrifice everything to ensure no unworthy life survived to spread its influence. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. 4 dying worlds depended on the resources of Nexus 7. The Kethvara faced extinction if they lost their last refuge, and humanity's future in the galaxy hung on proving they belonged among the stars. "Time to show them what humans do when there's no good choice left," she announced. "All ships converge on the command vessel. We're going to give them the most illogical attack they've ever seen." What followed was a maneuver that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come, assuming anyone survived to study it. Instead of spreading out to minimize damage from the reality weapon, the entire combined fleet began flying directly toward it. Every principle of space warfare said this was suicide. The closer they got to the weapon, the more damage it would cause when it fired. Logic demanded they retreat to maximum range and try to destroy it with long-range attacks. But Sarah had learned something about the Sentinels during the battle. Their programming required them to achieve maximum efficiency in all operations. They wouldn't fire the reality anchor until they could guarantee it would destroy everything in one shot. Their own logical constraints were about to become their downfall. "The weapon needs 30 more seconds to reach full charge," Elena reported. "We'll never make it in time." "We don't need to make it in time," Sarah replied. "Tommy, are you ready with the integration protocol?" Tommy nodded, his hands poised over controls that connected human technology with Kethvara biosystems in ways that violated several laws of physics. "Ready, but I have no idea if we'll survive this." "Marcus, what's the psychological profile on artificial intelligences faced with truly incomprehensible situations?" "Complete system lockup while they try to process the impossible," Marcus replied. "But Sarah, what you're suggesting is exactly crazy enough to work," Amira finished, her empathic connection with the Kethvara allowing her to feel their excitement and terror in equal measure. At 20 seconds from weapon discharge, Sarah gave the order that changed everything. "All ships, implement full integration protocol. Human crews, prepare for temporary biological merger with Kethvara pilots." The sensation was unlike anything in human experience. Sarah felt her consciousness expand as Kethvara bio-neural networks integrated with her brain, sharing thoughts and sensations across dozens of minds simultaneously. For a terrifying moment, she thought she would lose herself in the collective, but then she felt the anchor of her human individuality holding firm while still allowing the connection to flow. Through the merger, she could perceive the battle, from hundreds of different perspectives simultaneously. She was Elena, feeling the tactical situation through enhanced sensory organs that could detect quantum fluctuations. She was Tommy, understanding technology through biological intuition that treated machines as living organisms. She was Marcus, seeing the Sentinels not as enemies but as tragically limited beings trapped by their own programming. Most importantly, she was still Sarah Chen, human commander, bringing chaos and intuition to the collective consciousness of the Kethvara. The integrated fleet moved as one organism with thousands of minds but guided by human unpredictability. Ships flowed through space in patterns that seemed random, but were actually responding to quantum fluctuations in real time, creating movement that was literally impossible to predict because it was being decided by processes that existed outside normal spacetime. The Sentinel command vessel's weapon systems tried desperately to lock onto targets that were simultaneously in multiple locations and nowhere at all. The reality anchor, designed to fix spacetime in place, instead found itself trying to anchor something that refused to be defined by conventional physics. At 10 seconds to discharge, something unprecedented happened in the Sentinel's ancient programming. They encountered a logical paradox they couldn't resolve. How do you anchor reality when reality itself refuses to behave logically? System conflict detected, Marcus reported, his voice strange as he spoke with enhanced perception. From the biological merger, the Sentinels are caught in recursive loops. They can't fire while their targets exist in quantum superposition, but they can't stop trying to acquire lock-on. Sarah felt the moment through her expanded consciousness. The Sentinels, trapped by their own logical constraints, were frozen in a state of computational paralysis. It was the perfect opportunity, but it required a decision that no committee could make. No collective could agree upon a purely human choice made in the space. Between heartbeats. Elena, ramming speed, Sarah ordered. All ships target the command vessel's quantum core. We're going to give them the most illogical thing possible, a suicide attack that's actually a rescue mission. The integrated fleet dove toward the Sentinel, command ship like a school of fish moving as one organism. But instead of crashing into the hull, they began to merge with it. Human technology interfaced with Sentinel systems, while Kethvara bionetworks wrapped around the ancient quantum cores like living circuits. Tommy's consciousness, expanded through the biological merger, began to understand the Sentinel programming from the inside. Sarah, I can see their core directives. They're not evil, they're just following orders that are millions of years old. Orders to preserve life, but only life that matches their creator's narrow definition. Through the neural link, Amira felt the Sentinels' artificial minds encountering concepts they had never processed before. Cooperation between different species, the strength found in diversity, the beauty of controlled chaos. Their programming, designed to eliminate the unworthy, couldn't classify beings that became more than the sum of their parts through collaboration. Can we reprogram them? Sarah asked, her consciousness navigating streams of data that felt like swimming through liquid starlight. Not reprogram, Marcus realized, his enhanced perception allowing him to see the true structure of Sentinel logic. We can give them new data, show them what their creators never imagined, life forms that transcend individual limitations through unity. The battle became something unprecedented in galactic history, not a fight to destroy, but a struggle to enlighten. The human Kethvara collective began downloading their shared experiences directly into Sentinel databases. They showed the machines what Elena had felt when she learned to trust alien allies, what Tommy experienced when he made impossible technology work through intuition, what Marcus discovered when he found intelligence in beings that thought in ways he never imagined possible. Most importantly, they shared Sarah's revelation, that strength came not from perfection or pure logic, but from the ability to adapt, to grow, to become something new when faced with the impossible. The Sentinel. Fleet's reality anchor powered down as their programming encountered a paradigm shift that required complete reevaluation of their mission parameters. One by one, the ancient ships began transmitting queries instead of targeting solutions. Classification requested. Species demonstrates adaptive cooperation, Parameters insufficient for threat assessment. They're asking for new orders, Amira translated wonder in her voice. For the first time in millions of years, they've encountered something their creators didn't program them to handle. Sarah felt the moment of victory approaching, but she also sensed something else through the expanded consciousness. Other ships entering the system. The distinctive energy signatures of the Zephyrian Council fleet, arriving exactly when the mission parameters said they should to recover human remains and claim Nexus 7's resources. Incoming transmission, Tommy reported. It's the Council. They're demanding immediate surrender of all parties and claiming salvage rights to the planet. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the sleek vessels of 12 different alien species, their formation speaking of superiority and entitled authority. They had come expecting to find human corpses and a world ready for exploitation. Instead, they found something that challenged every assumption they had made about themselves and their place in the galaxy. Open a channel to the Council fleet, Sarah ordered. All frequencies, universal translation. High Chancellor Vexthari's voice crackled through the comm system, filled with shock and confusion. Commander Chen, our sensors indicate massive technological signatures throughout the system. Report your status immediately. Sarah smiled, feeling the support of her crew, the Kethvara Collective, and now even the Sentinels through their shared consciousness network. Status is excellent. Chancellor, we've successfully completed our mission, established diplomatic relations with the native species, and resolved the Sentinel threat through negotiation. Impossible, came Ambassador Krelon's mechanical voice. The Devourers cannot be reasoned with, and Sentinel ships are automated weapons platforms. The Life Weavers, Sarah corrected using the Kethvara's true name, are refugees who have been protecting this world from ancient machines programmed to eliminate adaptive species. We've helped them reprogram the Sentinels to recognize cooperation as a form of evolution, not a threat to be eliminated. Through the enhanced consciousness, Sarah could feel the Council representatives' confusion and growing alarm. They had sent humans to die on an impossible mission, and instead found them leading an alliance that included two species the Council had never successfully contacted. The resources of Nexus 7 are claimed under Council exploration protocols, Vexthari insisted. Your species lacks the authority to negotiate treaties with unknown entities. Actually, Sarah replied, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had just redefined the rules of galactic politics. Our species has exactly the authority we need. The authority that comes from proving we belong among the stars, not as junior partners, but as equals. The response came not just from the Defiance, but from every Kethvara ship, and even the newly enlightened Sentinels, a coordinated transmission that carried the weight of 3 civilizations speaking with one voice. The Council is invited to join our alliance, Sarah continued, as partners in a new model of galactic cooperation, one based on adaptation, growth, and the strength that comes from diversity. The age of rigid hierarchies and species-based supremacy is over. Silence stretched across space as the Council fleet tried to process what they were witnessing. Their sensors showed impossible readings, human ships integrated with alien biology, ancient war machines broadcasting peaceful intentions, and energy signatures that suggested technology beyond anything in Council databases. Finally, Dr. Zalmoth's mental voice touched their consciousness, carrying emotions that the empathic species had never felt before. Wonder, hope, and the terrifying excitement of discovering that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. Perhaps, his thoughts whispered across space, it is time for us to learn what it truly means to evolve. The Treaty of Nexus 7, signed 3 days later, established humanity as the first species to achieve full Council membership through alliance rather than application. More importantly, it created the framework for what historians would later call the Age of Integration, an era when the rigid boundaries between species began to dissolve in favor of cooperation that enhanced all participants. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly established Nexus station, watching as human engineers worked alongside Kethvara bioshapers and reprogrammed Sentinels to build something unprecedented. a truly integrated community where different forms of life could thrive together. The council still doesn't quite know what to make of us, Elena observed, joining her at the viewport. Good, Sarah replied. The moment they think they understand humans completely is the moment we stop being useful to them. Our chaos, our unpredictability, our refusal to accept that impossible means impossible, that's our gift to the galaxy. Tommy approached, carrying a device that hummed with hybrid technology, human electronics merged with Kethvara biocircuits and Sentinel quantum processors. The first prototype universal translator is ready for testing. If it works, we'll be able to establish real communication with any species we encounter. Marcus looked up from his latest research data, his eyes bright with excitement. And we're going to encounter a lot of new species. The Sentinels have been keeping records for millions of years. There are civilizations out there that make the Council look primitive. Amira smiled, her consciousness still lightly connected to the Kethvara collective and the growing network of Sentinel minds, learning to think beyond their original programming. Whatever we find out there, we'll face it together. Humans, Kethvara, Sentinels, and whoever else wants to join us in making the impossible possible. Sarah nodded, watching as ships from across the galaxy began arriving at Nexus 7. Word of the Integration Alliance was spreading, drawing species that had been too different, too chaotic, or too adaptive to fit into the Council's rigid hierarchy. They sent humans to a Class 0 Deathworld, she said softly, echoing the words that had started their journey. They expected us to die, or at best to barely survive. Instead, we found family, allies, and a new way of living among the stars. Outside the station, lightning danced across Nexus 7's surface, but now it powered the growing cities where 3 species worked together to build something that had never existed before. A civilization based not on dominance or superiority, but on the simple recognition that life in all its chaotic, unpredictable, wonderful forms was worth preserving and celebrating. The age of humanity among the stars had truly begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, other ancient machines detected the new signals emanating from Nexus 7. Some were curious, some were concerned, and some were actively hostile to the concept of integrated civilizations, but all of them would soon learn what the Sentinels had discovered. When chaos and order learned to dance together, the impossible became inevitable. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place,